You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What is going on, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I am your host, Steph, and you know I do 2 preview episodes a week for the upcoming matchup. And today we're going to be looking at the defense. This is the defense preview episode. We're going to be talking about the 49ers defense and how they match up against the Dolphins offense on Sunday. Obviously, a big task at hand, and that's why I chose to name this episode Immovable 49ers Defense meets the Unstoppable Dolphins Offense. It's going to be a hell of a matchup. I know that for sure. But let's go ahead and talk about some of the latest 49ers news. The 49ers did sign a cornerback to their practice squad, Janoris Jenkins. I know a lot of people were kind of stoked for that move. They cut Kadar Holman to make room and also signed Kimoko Ture back to the practice squad. And that's after signing T.Y. McGill, who was formerly on the practice squad, to the 53 last week. Now, let's look at some of the practice availability for the 49ers and the Dolphins. That is as of today, Wednesday, November 30th. So this is the first practice of the week for both teams. You see here the 49ers that did not practice today, Charles Omenihu, Christian McCaffrey. Interesting enough, both Omenihu and McCaffrey are both dealing with knee irritation. That's not great. McCaffrey, though, he did participate in warm-up, so that's a good sign as to his potential availability and progress that he might make throughout the week. Spencer Burford, he wanted to try to go. He was going to test out his ankle. If it felt fine, he would have been limited. However, obviously, when he warmed it up today before practice, was probably bothering him, and that explains the no practice for him today. Hopefully, he'll be available for Sunday, but that is still unclear at the moment. It's just too early in the week to know. And then, of course, Elijah Mitchell, as you guys probably have heard by now, he suffered an MCL injury on Sunday, and he's going to be missing 6 to 8 weeks. So hasn't been placed on IR yet, but I would expect that move is coming very soon. And of course, limited was Deebo Samuel dealing with a hamstring injury, and Eric Armstead, who is, you know, by all accounts, seems like he's making progress in the right direction. And so hopefully Eric Armstead will be able to play as soon as this Sunday. But another one that's kind of too early to say just because he's been out so long. It's been kind of murky on his status. So we'll just have to wait and see what the rest of the week holds as far as his practice availability. But it's definitely a good sign to see Eric Armstead back on the mend. And for the Dolphins, left tackle Terran Armstead, he's dealing with I believe it's a torn pec for Terran Armstead. And so he did not practice today. But interesting enough, Mike McDaniel said that Terran Armstead, the Dolphins, not 49ers Armstead, Terran Armstead is trying to play on Sunday, and he wouldn't put it past him to be able to play. So that'll be interesting because I know to this point, a lot of 49er fans have been like, oh, Nick Bosa is going to eat. This is great for our defensive line. But I'm not sure, if he were to play with this injury, it's pretty significant injury, I feel like that's also somewhat good for the 49ers. I mean, he's obviously not going to be at 100%. So it'll be interesting how that goes. I think either way, that might give the 49ers a bit of an advantage, but we'll talk about that more in a bit. And then also, in addition to the left tackle, their right tackle is hurt, and that is Austin Jackson with an ankle injury. And Mike McDaniel said he would be surprised if Austin Jackson plays. So we know for sure Austin Jackson will probably not be playing. Terran Armstead is pulling to play. So while it seems unlikely, he might still go. So we'll keep an eye on that throughout the week. Their backup running back, Myles Gaskin, also did not practice today, dealing with a shoulder and ankle injury. And of course, limited is Raheem Mostert, who missed last week's game for the Dolphins. He's dealing with a knee injury. My guess is that, they just wanted him to rest last week. Well, not rest, but they didn't want to risk making his knee injury worse last week and have him potentially miss this game against the 49ers. I'm sure he's very excited for this one. So Raheem Mostert, I would think, is on the way to being able to play on Sunday, and Mike McDaniel also indicated as much. Then they also have linebacker Jerome Baker dealing with a hip injury, who also was limited. Their defensive tackle Raekwon Davis and Teddy Bridgewater with a knee injury. So, there's both teams have their fair share of injuries right now, and we'll just have to wait and see what Friday holds. Friday will be my next preview episode. We'll talk about the offense, but I'll also give an update on some of these injury reports here. What's going on, Mariah? Glad you can make it. All right. So now that we've got that out of the way, I always do this. I always try to get some interesting stats of the opposing team together. And so here are some Dolphin stats. Now, you're not going to find a lot of negative stats here. I'm going to be honest with you. These are the Dolphins' offensive stats. So let's go over these. The Dolphins' offense, they are ranked second in passing yards per game, third in total yards per game, third in touchdowns per game, sixth in first downs per game, seventh in points per game. And interesting enough, in their last 3 games, they've averaged 34.7 points per game, which in that span would rank them first. So in their last 3 games, they rank first in points per game. But in the entire season, they're 7th. Still really, really good. They're also 7th in red zone scoring percentage, 10th in average scoring margin, 13th in third down conversion percentage, 18th in turnover margin per game, which is, 0 basically, because they don't turn the ball over a lot, but they also don't create a lot of turnovers. So it kind of neutral there on the turnovers. And then 28th in rushing yards per game. Not a lot of negative. If anything, the only negative I would say is the rushing yards per game, which is they average 94.8, which is not terrible even, but obviously 28th is at the end there. But passing the ball is working for them. So, hey, I mean, they're second in passing yards per game. So maybe that's why they don't run quite as much. But definitely you can see here how big of a challenge this is. This is a very powerful offense in the Miami Dolphins. And so the 49ers defense have a hell of a task up ahead. Let's go right into, these matchups really quickly. You see here I'll make this bigger. Here we go. You see here, sorry for the audio listeners, but I'll just summarize what we're seeing. The interior of the Miami's offensive line is better, okay? Better than their edges, but Teron Armstead possibly out, and if he's in, he's going to be playing with a torn pec, so won't be 100%. Dolphins will have Brandon Shell at left tackle if Teron Armstead is out. Brandon Shell last week, playing in place of Teron Armstead after he left the game, gave up 5 pressures and 5 hurries in 23 pass blocking snaps last week. Not great. But I also am aware of the fact that, it's difficult going into a game, not expecting that you're going to go in. And so, yes, that could have attributed, some of those pressures that he gave up. Maybe that's why he wasn't so prepared. I would assume that now that he's had a full week to prepare, he'll probably have a better performance than that. But still, he's the backup for a reason. So probably good for the 49ers. Brandon Shell had a 15.5 pass blocking grade from PFF in week 12. Not great. So whether it's, and as I mentioned, Austin Jackson, who PFF currently still has as the starting right tackle, he's likely going to be out for the Dolphins as well. So both of their tackles are going to be out. If anything, at least one of them is going to be out, and that's already a pretty big blow, I think, for this Dolphins offensive line. So, whether it's Ebukam or Bosa, I would say that's an advantage for the 49ers. I would, though, expect that Mike McDaniel tries to give them some help. Gesicki maybe is going to be busy helping block. I expect them to try to chip Bosa any chance they get. And, Mike McDaniel, we know how great of a coach he is. He's going to find ways to adjust and work around, his tackles being out. So we can't just assume it's going to be, 5 sacks for Bosa or anything like that, but it might just be a little bit easier. And also, I will be talking about what makes the Dolphins so difficult. The fact that Tua has been playing so well, getting the ball out quickly. Talk more about that in a bit, because that definitely impacts offensive line play in a positive way. So talk more about that in a bit, but let's talk about tight end here. So they have Mike Gesicki. And I'm going to put this slide right up here because I pointed it out last week, and I'm going to point it out again. So Gesicki, he is talented, very talented tight end. He is, however, underutilized compared to years past. So for whatever reason, Dolphins just don't use him as much as he was used before, probably because they have so many other weapons now. They didn't have Tyreek Hill before this season. So yeah, that could be one of the reasons. But if you see here, the 49ers defense, they're great against opposing tight ends. And I did share this stat last week. And in fact, the stat has improved since last week. Now the 49ers are allowing an average of just 34.8 yards per game to opposing tight ends. I believe last week it was like 35 point something. And so they've only allowed 2 touchdowns to the position this season, and both came in week 6 against the Falcons. So that was weird, but all this to say, the 49ers defense do a great job of covering tight ends. And it's no wonder, because they have Dre Greenlaw, they have Fred Warner, they have Aziz Al-Shaair. So a great group of guys. So I'm not too worried about Mike Gesicki in this game. Okay. The only thing I would worry about is that the 49ers maybe focus so much on the Dolphins receivers that it can open things up for Gesicki. But then again, maybe that's okay. Have Gesicki beat you. I feel like the 49ers would be happy to, let Gesicki run wild and stop Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Of course, easier said than done. Let's talk about the Dolphins receivers. They have Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. PFF has them both ranked in the top 10 among all wide receivers this season. Tyreek Hill, his worst game was in week 3 against the Bills, in which he had 2 catches, 33 yards, and no touchdowns. And I wanted to double check that, but I don't know if he left that game at any point for an injury or something, because that seemed pretty low. But anyway, his best game was against Baltimore when he had 190 yards and 2 touchdowns. For the YouTube viewers here, you guys can see on the left what that route chart looks like. Both of his touchdowns were deep plays. And so, again, that's just the threat that Tyreek Hill brings to this team. Surprisingly, Hill only has 4 touchdowns on the season. That was a little surprising to me, but again, this team has so many weapons that, they're still finding ways to score touchdowns with other guys on this team. It doesn't always have to be through Tyreek Hill. So that works for them. Jalen Waddle, his worst game was against the Jets in week 5 when he had just 23 yards. His best game also came against Baltimore in week 2. And for the YouTube viewers, you can see that on the right side here, his route chart. he had 171 yards and 2 touchdowns. So basically, don't do what the Ravens did on defense. All right, got it. Yeah. Yeah, I don't to give up that many yards and 4 touchdowns total to the receivers, 2 each basically to the top 2. Like that's crazy. I don't know what the Ravens were doing, but clearly just don't do that, okay? And so look, I think the 49ers are more likely to be able to shut down one of them than both just because they're so good. So if that were the case, who would you guys focus on more between Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill? Would you want to put more attention on Tyreek Hill because he's more of a home run hitter, or would you want to put the clamps on Jalen Waddle because he can beat you with yak? They both can beat you with yak. I mean, they're very similar kind of players in a way. Both really good receivers. I'm honestly not sure it even matters who you try to stop more because they're both so good and dangerous in their own right. And Sean here says Mooney versus Cheetah will be fascinating. Absolutely. And that's a great segue into my next topic because both Charvarius Ward and Diamador Lenore are going to have their hands full come Sunday. But I am a little more worried about Lenore, and I'll tell you guys why. Well, you can see here, I tweeted this a little bit ago. After allowing just 6 yards combined in weeks 10 and 11, Diamador Lenore got picked on a bit versus Saints. He allowed 3 catches on 4 targets, 60 yards, 24 of those in yak, and a pass rating of 116.7. So I have my concerns about him this week against Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, especially because I know that Mike McDaniel knows Diamador Lenore's weaknesses. The good thing is that Mooney Ward was not here last season, so he doesn't have as much knowledge about Mooney Ward besides what Ward has shown on film. But Diamador Lenore, he's still a pretty young player. He's still learning the ropes. I still think he's improving. He's learning as he goes. He isn't perfect. But Mike McDaniel probably knows what Lenore struggles with. And because Mooney Ward has been so good, most teams are picking on Lenore. And I would expect that to continue this week with the Dolphins against Lenore and these receivers because they're so good. And I'm not sure that Lenore at this point is good enough to really combat that. So, yeah. He's also on the season, he's given up a lot of yards after the catch, which is another thing I don't think bodes well for him against these 2 receivers. I hope and I think D'Amico is going to give him some safety help, I would assume. But, we're just going to have to wait and see. So I'm clenching a little bit about that matchup, Diamador Lenore going against either of these receivers. So hopefully it's not as bad as, I'm anticipating or trying to prepare myself for. But look, the Dolphins also have Trent Sherfield. We all know him. He played with the 49ers, right? They have him in the slot who, since about week 7, he's played a more consistent role for them. And he's gotten like 2 to 4 targets a game, which is not, crazy, but he gets peppered here and there with some targets. But see, this is the challenge this week. Hill and Waddle can stretch the field. They can stretch your defense thin. And that opens things up for plays underneath. And it means less stacked boxes for their running backs. So let's talk about the Dolphins running backs. I almost called them the 49ers running backs because not so long ago, they used to be. Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson Jr. are the Dolphins running backs, kind of they do a 1-2 punch with those two since Jeff Wilson has been traded to Miami. And then, as I mentioned, Mostert did not play last week with a knee injury, but he probably just wanted that extra week of rest to ensure that he would be able to play against his former team. Mike McDaniel expects him to play, so I expect him to play too. And Jeff Wilson Jr., he did leave Sunday's game with an injury, but haven't heard anything about that since. So I'm assuming that his availability is not in question. He also was not on the practice report as being limited or anything like that. So I'm assuming he's good to go. The interesting thing is the Dolphins are 28th in rushing yards per game. Probably because they only run it 38% of the time. It's not so much because they can't run the football. It's just that they probably don't feel like they need to. I don't know. The Dolphins are a trip. But they're already one-dimensional, but it's working for them. So I guess I can't really judge them. Is the fact that they're one-dimensional, does that help the 49ers? Like, is that a good thing or a bad thing for the defense? I'd be most concerned with the Dolphins using screens to neutralize the 49ers pass rush and them having success with that, because a lot of teams have, tried to do that in weeks past to, again, neutralize the 49ers pass rush. So I think the Dolphins are going to have a similar approach, especially given the fact, what I mentioned, both of their tackles may be out for this game. It's going to be all the more important for them to get the ball out quickly and try to, counter the 49ers being over aggressive with their defensive line. So let's get some of these comments here. Ronnie says, rather clamp down Tua. If he doesn't have the team to throw it, helps outlet corners. Yeah, I mean, and Tua is who I'm going to talk about next. And I think that's definitely the key, but that is also easier said than done. But we'll talk about it. Trippy Josh says, Raheem Mostert was so fun to watch when he was on the 49ers. Yeah, he definitely was. I enjoyed watching him. It's been kind of sad to see fans take some of his comments that he said in the last week as an opportunity to bash him, because I have nothing but good memories about Raheem Mostert's time here. Yes, he was injured a lot. That's the unfortunate part, but I still appreciate Mostert for everything he did as a Niner. Some really good memories with him, and he is, the best way to put it is, he was a home run hitter, which I don't think the 49ers have at running back right now. I mean, honestly, the closest thing would be Christian McCaffrey, but I don't think we've even seen him, take off for a touchdown. The closest thing actually was Elijah Mitchell, I thought, since he came back from his injury this year, but he's injured again, so won't have the opportunity to see that. But I really liked what Elijah Mitchell was putting together. But all right, let's talk about Tua Tagovailoa, okay? All right, his average time to throw this season is 2.6 seconds, which is good, okay? In case you guys were wondering, that's good. It's among the fastest in the league. In fact, the only other quarterback who is at 2.6 seconds, there are a couple quarterbacks who are faster than that, but there's another quarterback who's at 2.6 as well, and that is Andy Dalton, who the 49ers faced last week. And yes, the 49ers did shut out the Saints last week. However, I think anyone who watched the game can see that Dalton was able to get the ball out quickly, and that made things more difficult for the 49ers defense to get home, to generate pressure, to get sacks, which, even the one sack that the 49ers got, the only sack, is proof of that, I think. So that explains the lack of pressure on Sunday, the fact that Dalton was just doing a great job of getting the ball out quickly. And so in a way, it was good that the 49ers had that matchup, just the week before, not too long ago, because that's fresh in their minds. And I would think that DeMeco Ryans is probably looking at that and seeing ways that the 49ers could have improved to make things a little more difficult for Andy Dalton, because they're going to need to do the same thing against Tua. against Dalton, it worked. And let's be honest, the Saints' weapons are nothing close to what, Tua and the Dolphins have, especially if we're talking about the receivers specifically. So, and the thing that makes it even more difficult, or will make it more difficult, a bigger challenge, is the fact that speed. The Dolphins have a ton of speed on their offense. And so that makes it even easier for, on top of having, great receivers, they're also super fast. And so that makes it easier for Tua to get the ball out quickly. And so the 49ers secondary, they're going to have to do their part and defend Miami well off the snap. Again, that's easier said than done, but that's for D'Amico Ryans to figure out. I'm glad I don't have that job. But I also expect the Dolphins to attack this defensive line with screens. I mean, it's what a lot of other teams have done. But at this point, the good thing is the 49ers have dealt with other teams trying to do this, and so they should have some experience on how to counter or adjust against teams who want to, just kill the 49ers with screens. I don't think that's really going to work this time. It probably won't be as effective. Of course, Dolphins talent-wise are still better than a lot of those other teams who try to do that. But I still think the 49ers will probably have a good counter or adjustment at this point in time. So here's another Tua slide here for the YouTube viewers. This is his passing chart from the entire season. You can see where he's most accurate or where he's better than average, and where he's not quite as good. So I'm assuming if the Dolphins were to throw some screens, it would be to his left, and maybe that's because he's left-handed. I don't know how that works, but yeah, it seems that the left side is a little bit better for him on the short throws. But when we're talking deep passes, he's better throwing to the right side of the field. But not to say that he's terrible throwing to the left, deep portion of the field, just not as good as the right. It's still pretty good, if you ask me. What's going on, Jason? Glad you can make it. Melissa, what's going on? Quick reminder, make sure you guys like this video. If you guys have not yet, appreciate all the love. Hey, by the way, I hit monetization on this channel. I am eligible to be able to make money off my YouTube channel. And just really quickly, I want to say that I appreciate all of you who tune in to the videos, who comment, who like, who have subscribed. Really appreciate it a lot. So yeah, I'll be able to monetize soon. I still have to apply, but yeah, working out those kinks. Don't worry about it. And as promised, because I did say that I would be doing a giveaway when I reached monetization, that will be announced very soon. So everyone who is subscribed is going to be eligible for the giveaway. So make sure that you are subscribed to the channel to make sure you get entered for that. Thank you so much, Mariah. Appreciate it. All right, next. Really fun segment here. Cap or no cap? For those of you who don't remember my cap or no cap segments in 49K, I haven't done it in quite a while, so I will re-explain what it means. Obviously, some of you may know that when someone says cap or no cap, cap means you're lying, like I don't believe you, that's cap. No cap means, okay, yeah, I agree with you. You're telling the truth about that. Okay, so basically it's true or false. That's the best way I can probably simplify it. So cap or no cap, guys. Raheem Mostert said this in an interview, and it made everyone like explode, 49er fans. So cap or no cap? Do the Dolphins have way better talent in Miami? Do they have way better talent? Cap or no cap? Let me know in the comments. Let me know. I'm so curious. Here's what I'm going to say. Do the Dolphins have more talent? I say cap, but I'll explain. I'll explain. So I think as a whole, if we're talking about the offense, or the entire team, not just the offense, as a whole, the 49ers have more talent. Are the Dolphins doing more with their talent? Yes, absolutely. I don't think we can really argue that. Mike McDaniel is doing some crazy things over there with the Dolphins. And I think we can safely say Tyreek Hill is a better wide receiver than anything that the 49ers have right now. That can be true. But I'm just talking about as a whole, I think the 49ers have the better talent. Dolphins are doing more with their talent. But if we're just talking about talent strictly, I think the 49ers have the edge there. Either way, like I respect what the Dolphins are doing. I respect their team. Obviously, I love Mike McDaniel. He's doing some great things over there. So it's an interesting question for sure. I know a lot of people were mad he said that. Trippy Josh says that's no cap. So Trippy, you think the Dolphins have more talent, huh? All right. Oh, he said, oh, I read that wrong. Okay. So then you agree that the 49ers have more talent. Thank you, Jason. Thank you. Appreciate the love. Thank you, Oregon Life. Appreciate it. But I'm curious to know, cap or no cap, on do the Dolphins have more talent? Let me know in the comments. Let's move on to the next one. He said, me and Hefe, which is Jeff Wilson's nickname, me and Jeff Wilson are going to go crazy. He's talking about Sunday's game. You think they're going to go crazy? You think Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson Jr. are going to go crazy on the 49ers defense? Cap or no cap? I say that's cap. In fact, here's what I say. And sorry for the audio listeners, but here's what I say. You guys see that? Big cap. That is big cap. I don't know. Dude, I don't know if you guys saw Brian Robinson's Commanders running back, Brian Robinson. After their game last week, he wore a giant hat because one of his friends has a big hat company, I guess. And so he was supporting his friend. That's a good friend right there, by the way, Brian Robinson. Props to him. But he wore that hat. And so now I'm using it as a meme. Anytime something is cap or big cap, I just share that. So are Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson Jr. gonna go crazy on Sunday? There's my answer. Big cap. Yeah, Jason says cap. Trippy says that cap is so big, I thought it was a military helmet. Yeah, that was insane. I've never seen a cap that big in my life. Let's see. Oregon Life says, like to see Bosa feed in this game 3 sacks. Ooh, 3 sacks. You're predicting 3 sacks for Bosa. I like that. I like where your head's at. Mariah says, I think Fred and Greenlaw will have something to say about that, about Hefe and Moser going crazy. Yeah, I think the entire defense, honestly, the entire defense is lights out when it comes to defending the run. I don't think Mostert or Jeff Wilson are really going to do much. One, because the Dolphins don't run the ball that much. And two, just because the 49ers are so good at defending the run, I really don't think they're going to find a lot of room on Sunday. But yeah, we'll just wait and see. Jason says they don't have way better talent. It evens out on offense. Yeah, talking about the first one here, when Raheem said we have way better talent here. Yeah, they don't have way better talent, but yeah, I think the offense obviously is playing above and beyond what the 49ers have been able to do so far. Okay. Yeah, I'll admit that. Yeah. Jason says the D has way more talent, though. Talking about the 49ers, I would assume. Yes. And on Friday, I'm going to be talking about the Dolphins defense against 49ers offense. To me, that's the equalizer because the Dolphins defense is not that good. They're pretty mid. They're middle of the pack. So that, I think, is going to equalize the game and give the 49ers that chance, because I think the 49ers are going to be able to score a lot of points in this one too, based on the Dolphins defense. But I'll save that discussion for Friday, so make sure you guys tune into that. Now, for the last cap or no cap, he said, we have a quarterback who can actually sling it. Cap or no cap? I'm going to say no cap, okay? Tua, he's been playing really well this year, all right? And so Jimmy Garoppolo, for his standards, has been doing well this year as well, but what Tua is doing within that offense, what Mike McDaniel has been able to bring out of Tua this season, I think is definitely he has the edge over Jimmy Garoppolo for sure, and especially because Tua can actually throw downfield. He's more accurate downfield as opposed to Jimmy Garoppolo. So I'm going to say that's no cap, okay, Raheem? I'll give you that one. I'd give the edge to Tua over Jimmy Garoppolo every day. Trippy says, I haven't really watched the Dolphins games this year, but from what I've seen in highlights, I have to go with no cap. Yeah, absolutely. Tua is a beast, been a beast, but the D is gonna feast. Ooh, I like that. That rhymes. It's a good one. It's a good one. By Sinstler, I think I'm saying Sinister. That's how you say it. Sinister. That's a good comment right there. Yeah, I mean, I think the 49ers defense, the way they're playing right now, might be close to the toughest defense they faced all season. Aside from maybe the Bills, and they played the Bills pretty early in the season. I believe it was week 2 or 3. I want to go back and watch that game because I want to see what the Bills did. And because I kind of feel like the Bills defense is similar to the 49ers, and they have a really good defensive line. So I don't know what they did, but I want to watch that game because it might give the 49ers some ideas of what to do or what not to do. So I'm just curious to see that one again. Sinister says Mostert is still salty. Yeah, I mean, among some of the things he said was that the 49ers were pretty much pissed off when he elected to have season-ending surgery. And you know what? I don't blame him for being upset about that. But I also don't blame the 49ers, a business at the end of the day. The 49ers have to look out for them because they run a business. The business side of football is ugly sometimes. So I think 31 other teams would have reacted the same way to Mostert, electing to take season-ending surgery instead of wanting to play later that season, including the Dolphins, I think. But yeah, I wasn't too mad at that comment. I totally get it. But yeah. I mean, obviously this is a big game for both teams, but we got to remember, while it is a big game in the scheme of yes, it's Kyle Shanahan going up against his former student, Mike McDaniel, his former, not even student. I mean, those guys have worked together for so long. Former assistant, I would say. And so because of that, to us, it's a very big game. But we got to remember, this isn't a conference game, okay? I don't think we have to remember the most important games here on out are the NFC games. And so got to remember that. The 49ers could lose this game and it'll still be okay. I know for pride, this one would be really nice to win, especially because of how they lost to the Chiefs. I think the 49ers kind of need this one to kind of prove to themselves and everyone else that, yeah, we're a playoff team and we can beat other playoff teams too. So it'd be nice for the 49ers to get this one, but in the playoff picture, it's not the most important game. So just pointing that out. Okay. Anyway, all right. So keys for the defense to kind of sum up this whole discussion. 49ers secondary have to cover wide receivers off the snap, right? And I acknowledge that's easier said than done, okay? It's going to be really tough, especially with the speed that the Dolphins have at wide receiver. But they need to do that in order to give the defensive line time to get to Tua, to affect his throw, to get sacks on him, and so it's going to be tough. It'll be very tough. I don't know if they can do it, but that's going to be one of the keys of the game. So I hope they can, at least to an extent. And then another key is bend, don't break. There's going to be a lot of bending in this game. We're going to see the 49ers defense, I think, look uncomfortable, and we might see them look as uncomfortable as when they did play against the Chiefs. Hopefully not that uncomfortable, because that game was terrible for the defense. But I think compared to these last couple weeks where, they've gotten those second half shutouts for 4 weeks in a row, I don't think it's going to be that kind of performance. Okay. So they are going to give up some stuff. Right. Don't panic. It's going to happen. Bend, don't break, though. All right. And also, my last key for the defense is adjust. They're going to throw some things at you. I think the fact that Mike McDaniel knows what DeMeco Ryans probably wants to run, he's going to try to attack what he knows or thinks are vulnerabilities in this 49ers defense. And so, one, I think DeMeco, it'd be wise for him to have adjustments in the back of his mind ready to go, just in case it plays out that way. Or, like he's been doing, see what the Dolphins try to do in the first half, and then at halftime, put the clamps on, make those adjustments, and ride those adjustments out to the rest of the game. But yeah, this is going to be a tough game for this defense. And so I just know it's going to be a fun one, though, and looking forward to it. So, yeah, that's all I have today for the defensive preview. Make sure you guys tune in on Friday for my offense preview episode, because, again, I think the offense is going to look a lot better on Sunday than they did last week. So, and I'll explain why. All right. So have a good rest of your evening, guys. Make sure you like this video if you have not yet. Make sure you subscribe if you have not yet. Appreciate all the love. Have a good rest of your evening. Peace.